Well, for August, the stories we're going to be hearing from this chair aren't going to be so much about what people are doing in their ministries necessarily or in the community. Those are very important for our awareness and support. But it's also important that we just know people's personal stories, their faith journeys, because as we hear about theirs, it encourages us on our own. And so throughout August, we're going to hear people telling us about their faith journey that has led them to this present moment. The story will continue. It doesn't end with this moment. We are always growing and learning and evolving, but we want to hear about some of the twists and turns that people have taken to get thus far on this ongoing journey. And so one of our own staff ministers, Kevin Tisdol, is in the chair today. So would you please welcome Reverend Kevin Tisdol.
Thank you all. Thank you.
It's all the setup you're getting, so just go.
Isn't that great? I am, in many ways, a child of the 60s. I was born in the mid-50s, but my memories start in the 60s.
The 1950s, right?
1950s,
Okay, right.
Thank you, yes. Thanks a lot.
To be clear.
So, of course, I went to Bible school and Sunday school in the morning, and I was that one kid that thought that the stories that they were telling, these Jesus stories, were just that, stories, fairy tales. And my Sunday school teachers, they were like, oh God, not you again. But I was that kid, and somehow or another, I made it to be baptized back in 1964. My brother and me, that same day, full immersion, white robe, the whole thing, dunked in the water, got out of the water, and I supposedly was a Christian, a Baptist, a Northern Baptist, but we still sang the gospel and all the rest of that. And my church, from listening to so many people, to my friends, was very different than the church that they grew up in. In my church, we practiced a truly liberation theology. It was a liberation theology that was rooted in the civil rights movement, yet and still it was always from our pastor a positive message. I know a lot of people who didn't get that, and I hurt for them even to this day. So I grew up in that church, and one Sunday we'd look up and the Reverend Jesse Jackson would be there. And after I left the church, it became a sanctuary at one point for Reverend Al Sharpton when he was going through something with a young lady from upstate New York. So that church set the rules for me for what church was supposed to be in terms of a positive message. Moved to high school. I graduate from high school, and I begin to fully embrace who I am as a gay man. And for some reason, even though I didn't hear it in the church, I felt that there was something about being gay and being in the church that just didn't fit. So I stopped going to church. And I stopped going to church for a very, very long time, through the 1970s, through the 1980s, into the 1990s. Now, in the 1980s, I met my husband. We'll be 29 years together in December, 4 years legally married. So I meet Michael, and we talk about spirituality, we talk about faith walk, but we couldn't find a church that we felt comfortable in. Trust me, we looked. One weekend, we're in D.C., and a friend of ours says to us, well, I've got to go to church tomorrow morning, and would you like to join us? We didn't that time, but the next time we went, we did, and we went to MCC D.C. Life-changing experience. Not only did we realize that God loved us just as we are, but there was a church that we could go to where we could celebrate all that we were. So we found the New Jersey church, and that was a search, trust me on that. We find the New Jersey church, and we go there, and they're not as open and loving as the DC church, but we slog through. My husband loves music. He loves gospel music especially, and he learned that the only way to get things done was to do it yourself. So this man who doesn't really read music started a gospel choir, and that gospel choir still exists to this day, so I think he did a good job there. Through all of that, we had a pastoral change. Our pastor decided that it was time for him to move on, and during the period between pastors, I became the church's interim pastoral leader. That led us to calling this gentleman to be our pastor at Christ the Liberator in New Jersey. The first time I ever heard him preach was the Sunday right after 9/11. It was an amazing thing to listen to this man talk about God's omnipresence and God being with us at all times and God's love being true. And there was one thing that I will always remember from that sermon, and that was a seminal moment in my life. And he said that when the towers went down, God shed the first tear. And that set me up for the rest of where I am today. Listening to the positive messages about who we are, understanding that we are always in God's love, leads me to understand that this is the kind of community that I've always wanted to be a part of, a community that was open to the possibilities of love, open to the possibilities of the good word. And I'm so glad that I found this church and all of you.
Thank you, Reverend Kevin.